So why should Americans care about the religious liberties of others? Why should a Christian care about the religious liberties of a Muslim? Why should a religious person care about the religious liberties of an atheist? And the answer to that is, not only as a matter of high principle, but anyone can be the target of law which would require a violation of conscience. Many religious liberty cases arise just from the clunky bureaucracy that passes broad laws without thinking or without necessarily even knowing about their impacts upon particular groups of people. There have been a surprising number of unanimous decisions in the Supreme Court in the last 10 years on issues of freedom of religion. Just, most recently about a Muslim prisoner who had not been allowed to wear a beard that was longer than a quarter of an inch. This coming term, the court just decided to hear a case in which a church school that has a playground was not allowed to participate in a state program to rubberize the playground to increase safety. The variety is enormous, and those who focus just on a few sort of hot-button culture war issues really miss the point of how diverse religious interests are and how the law affects that in just any number of different ways. One of the sets of cases before the Supreme Court this term has to do with whether religiously affiliated organizations that are not actually churches are entitled to the same protection that churches receive from having to cover within their health insurance programs for their employees contraceptives. Now, this is a problem for Roman Catholic organizations for whom contraception is contrary to the religion, and also others for certain contraceptives that are regarded as being abortion-inducing. The government decided to draw a line in a way the law has never drawn a line before. There are lots of accommodations in the law for religious organizations, but usually that extends to all religious organizations. And in this particular case, they excluded from those accommodations these organizations that provide services to members of the general public. And that's the question that's now before the court, is whether this class of organizations is legally entitled to be treated the same way as churches themselves. So right now it's interesting the way in which religion has become part of our foreign policy discussions. There have been really two things that have arisen. One is whether we should exclude some groups on the basis of their religion, with specific reference to Muslims. I think religious freedom principles tell us we haven't done that, we shouldn't do that. That would be quite a departure from our principles and our traditions. But another aspect has gotten slightly less attention, and I think it should get more, and that is to focus our refugee resettlement, in particular our asylum, on those members of groups that are targeted for elimination. Christians in the Middle East, Syria and Iraq in particular, are being targeted for forced conversions, put in sexual slavery, driven out of their homes. But our refugee program has been quite stingy about extending its places to Christian refugees. Only roughly 2% of the Syrian refugees have been Christians, even though they are the largest targeted group for religious persecution in that part of the world. We have had religious freedom controversies from the very beginning, even before the First Amendment was enacted, when, for example, the state of New York debated whether Roman Catholics could be citizens of New York. As America becomes more diverse, we just see a much wider range of ordinary people who are caught between what they believe is the demands of their higher power and the demands of the regulatory state. I think it's made religious freedom protections more important, more difficult in some ways, but more important, because enabling people to follow what they regard as the most important commands of life, even when they differ from the majority, is not always easy, but it's a lot of what America's about.